I've been taking Aeonium cuttings for years, and there's lots of different techniques, but I'm going to show you the easiest method. Now there's many different ways that you can take your cuttings, but I'm going to show the easiest way, the way that I know that you will get success. First of all, you want to find some nice healthy material from your mother plant. You want to find a shoot that is about 10 centimetres long, and you want to go in with a pair of sharp secateurs, and you want to try and make a nice clean cut like so. Okay, and now once you've got your cutting material, now what's important is, and I've realised from failures in the past, now if you pop this up straight away and put it straight into compost, you'll probably find it will die. Now what's important, and it goes against everything else you do with other cuttings, is that you leave this cutting, you put it in the house and let it dry out for 2 to 3 days. Because what will happen if you don't, you'll sit the cutting up that way and the moisture will run out, your plant will wilt and it will die. And by leaving it out on the side, the end dries over. And what I've got is, I've got one here that I did it with a few days ago, and if I show you that one, on the end there you can see it's nicely dried. You can put your finger on the end, and as soon as that's dried over on the end, you know that it's ready to plant, and that's where, all down the side of there and the shoots there, that's where the roots will start to shoot from. So next is what you want to do, is you want a potting mix. Now there's lots of different ways of doing it. Now I've did all these 7 Aeonium cuttings. They were done about 6 months ago. Now they've all taken, and a lot of advice is that you need to use compost with lots of grit mixed in or lots of sand. It's right, you definitely need it free draining, but there's no harm in just using ordinary compost. As long as you're not over watering your Aeoniums, you'll find it absolutely fine, and it just cuts down the cost. And I don't use any fertiliser at all. You know, they are succulents. They will quite often cope with very little feed or none at all, and you can actually use old compost. I mean, this is compost that I've used from some old vegetable tubs, and that's how all these took, and they've taken fine. So that proves that it can work. You don't need to use expensive compost, and you don't need to add lots of grit, as long as you've got compost that's light and that is going to drain well. Okay, so firstly you want to fill up a pot, a nice reasonable sized pot, because with the Aeoniums the cuttings are often quite big. And you're just going to fill it up with compost, and then once you've done that, you take your cutting and you make a little finger hole, or you can use a pencil if you've got one, and you pop it in, and you want to go over just over halfway, so you're looking at it going into the compost about 5 centimetres deep. You could use a slightly smaller pot if you want, but what is essential when you've got these is your aftercare if you want your Aeoniums to survive. Now a lot of succulents don't need a lot of water. Aeonium's a bit of an exception. You need to make sure with Aeoniums you keep them damp, because they will wilt. And when I say water them, you want to make sure that they're damp and then allow them to dry out before you water again. You don't want to oversaturate them, because they won't like that. Okay, so you make sure you firm your compost around the plants with your finger. Make sure it's in nice and tight and it can't sink or wobble. Once you've got your plant potted up, you can do 2 things with it. You could leave it outside in part shade somewhere, or alternatively you could bring it inside. You could put it on a windowsill, and probably within about 3 to 4 weeks it will start taking roots. I like to leave mine probably about 6 months before I decide to pop them on. These are about 6 months old here, and if I take a look at the roots here, look at that, there's plenty of root growth there, but I think they're great plants. The best time to take the cuttings is when they're actively growing, springtime being the best. So they work in so many locations in the garden. Always think about your backdrop when you've got an Aeonium. Put it up against something where, I mean, they look great up against the blue sky, but look, we've got here, you've got a nice rusty colour Carex, and they look great behind that. Or even if you pick something with really bright green leaves to go behind it, it really makes them stand out, because you really want them to show off. They're such architectural plants, you just want to make sure you give them a good backdrop. But yeah, Aeoniums, really great. Give them a go. Cuttings are dead easy.